The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash from Tash Invest and Ana from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us. We've got something really important to ask you. We're wondering if you can download and subscribe to this podcast. It's really important to us, and we would really love if you can share this episode with a friend.
You may have noticed recently that we have started putting ads in the podcast, which is really exciting for us. And we really appreciate you listening to them and still listening to our podcast. Podcasts are quite expensive to run and to edit. There's studio fees, there's editing fees, there's our time as well. So we're hoping to hit a certain number of listeners that we can kind of meet all of these costs and also bring you better guests and better episodes and better quality episodes as well. So we would really appreciate it if you shared it for us.
Thanks so much.
Now for today's episode, we have a really great listener question from Angela about whether or not she should buy more ETFs or put more money into her super instead. Let's have a listen to her question.
Hey Tash, my name is Angela. My question is about superannuation in comparison to investing in things like ETFs. I'm very new to the world and looking at getting started. I am a sole trader, so I kind of really depict how much I want to put into my own super. I do understand that you don't have full access to your super until a certain age, so that is that. But when it comes to investing, the differences, I guess, in just putting more into super versus starting to look at putting some into things like ETFs, etc. Thanks so much.
Oh, what a great question. I get this asked all the time, especially in my age group, a little bit older, where you're getting closer and closer to retirement, whether you should invest in super or if you should invest outside of super. But before we kick it off, should we share some of our money moments, Tash?
Yes. What's your money moment?
Oh, mine. So it was end of financial year and I had a couple things on the list that I was going to get. And then I just decided wants versus needs. And I was like, do I really need this? And I just didn't buy some of the things. So I felt like I saved money, and maybe I've just like kicked the can further down where I was like, I still need that hand blender, but do I really need it? Yeah. Do I really need it? It's been, so I've always been really good at this, and maybe because I'm a procrastinator when it comes to buying things, it saved me money.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Like there's things that I'll put in my basket, but then because there's so much on the website, I'll get overwhelmed and not actually check out. So I'm like, oh, maybe there's something else I need, or maybe I need something else to save on shipping, or maybe there's a better spot to buy it. And then I just don't buy it. So procrastinating for the win for the first time ever.
Yeah, exactly. What's yours?
My money loss is I bought a brand new book from Big W. It was a little bit of a money win in there because I had my 10% everyday reward subscription to use. So I got 10% off the book, but it ended up being $16, I think. And then I just left it on the plane. I've never done this before. Yeah, I put it in the little seat in front of me and I just left it there, which is very sad. I didn't even read it.
You didn't even read any of it?
No.
Oh,
it was
that's
just
the
flight
saddest.
from Canberra to Melbourne, and it was only 45 minutes, and I was just on my phone because I had Wi-Fi. So that was a bit tragic.
Was it our book?
No.
Can you imagine you bought our own book and you
book.
We should totally do that as we fly around, just leave our book around.
I did bring it with me everywhere. Oh, yeah, that'd be funny.
As a little surprise, yeah.
I've noticed they have books on the Virgin Entertainment. So one of my goals this year, I think, is to try and weasel our way into the Virgin Entertainment system, maybe. I'm just putting it out into the universe. Yeah, because I heard Stephen from the Diary of a CEO talking about how he did that with their podcast on some airline. I can't remember which one. So I'm going to try see if we can get our book on there.
Oh, that'd be so rad. Yeah, fly around and listen to our
manifest. Yeah.
Yeah.
But money wins for all of us because it was July 1st the other day. We're all getting new tax rates and most of us will get a tax cut as well, which is very exciting. So you can go have a look on, there's just a tax cut government website that you can have a look on. There's heaps of calculators you can use as well if you just Google tax cuts to see what comes up. But as an example, if you make $50,000 a year, you'll save around $929 a year, which is awesome. If you earn $90,000 a year, you'll save just under $2,000 a year. And if you earn $100,000 $110,000, you'll save around $2,500 a year. So they've just changed the marginal tax rates and moved those brackets slightly. So worth having a look at that if you're interested. But the key with this is making sure you actually put that money away now or make a plan for it now instead of getting used to spending it. It's really hard to come back from lifestyle creep, but it's fine if you do it now and you lock that money away and you don't get used to it.
So what are you going to do with your money?
Probably just invest it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Maybe I should actually update my Perla amount because it's still $200 a week. But if I give myself like an inflation or wage increase, maybe add 4% to it and then add my tax saving amount, maybe I could do like, I don't know, 225 or something. That's a good idea. I'll have to go work that out later. Yeah, I'll have to go get my calculator out later. Ask me next week.
Okay, I will. Absolutely. And the other money win of this new financial year is that your super is actually up 11.5%. So it's been increased from last year. So many money wins all across the board. We'll just have to see how inflation keeps up with these money wins.
Many money wins if your contract said that it was excluding super and it's added on top. Maybe a slight money loss if your salary was inclusive of super, because then you might be taking home less each pay. Yes. Am I right? Yes.
Yep. Yeah, you're totally right. And that's something to be cognizant of when you're applying for jobs and negotiating your contract, whether it's inclusive or exclusive of super.
Yes. So many sneaky things I can put into contracts, but it can make a huge difference.
For sure. So let's talk about this awesome call that we got from this listener, Angela. And her question is obviously about whether to invest in your super or outside of super. So let's kick it off by actually talking about what super is.
Super is an investment vehicle or kind of a structure to build wealth through. So it's kind of like if you think of investing in a broker, super is kind of like that broker. So super in itself isn't an investment, but you can invest inside of super.
So at the moment, your employer has to pay a mandatory contribution of 11.5% on your salary into a chosen super fund of yours. This is set to increase by 2025 to 12%. However, you can also make voluntary contributions to boost your super ahead of retirement. Now, the voluntary contributions can be in the form of pre-tax, so they're also called concessional contributions, or after-tax, which is non-concessional. And both of them have a cap, so there's a limit to how much you can put within that.
We'll talk about those caps in just a moment, but I find this wording really confusing sometimes because super is obviously taxed as well. So pre-tax contributions are ones made before your personal income tax is applied, which means that you can reduce your taxable income, and these are taxed at a lower rate within your super fund, which is awesome. Post-tax contributions are made after your personal income tax has been applied, meaning you've already paid tax on this money before you put it into your super.
Yes, very confusing. So let's just dive a little bit deeper. Concessional contributions, so the pre-tax ones. This is essentially if you're doing things such as salary sacrifice or doing a personal contribution, which is a tax deductible, is claimed on it. So the annual cap for this is $30,000 a year.
In terms of saving money and making the most of the tax rates, concessional contributions are the most attractive, but obviously there is that limit. So if for some reason you want to put more in your super outside of that cap, there are the things called like catch-up caps, which we can chat about a bit later. But let's just say you've reached your cap limits and now you want to add more into super, then you would have to make a non-concessional contribution or a post-tax contribution. So this annual cap is $120,000 a year from the 1st of July this year. The benefits of doing this, though, is that even though you're paying the full tax rate outside of super, once it's inside super, you do get the super tax rate, the special rate on things like dividends or income within super. So there is benefits still, but it's not that big initial tax saving like with concessional contributions.
So holistically, investing in your super will give you a better tax advantage holistically. However, there are things to be aware of when it comes to the caps or how much you can put in it and how you're actually contributing, whether it is pre-tax or post-tax.
Super can be very confusing. I think I was reading it's one of the most complex retirement systems in the world. There are so many rules, but it's important to remember that by investing inside super, you are really making the most of those tax benefits. But obviously it is quite far away. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, what is investing outside of super?
So when you're investing outside of your super, you're investing essentially through a broker like Perler or ComSec or Self Wealth. You can invest in the Australian share market or in US shares or in individual companies.
It is a lot less confusing than super because there's not all these contribution caps with concessional or non-concessional, whatever it is. So you can invest as little or as much as you want within reason. When you're investing in individual shares and you're owning them directly, there might be the $500 minimum, or investing in some ETFs. But if you're investing in micro-investing apps or micro-investing platforms, you could probably put in $1 or $5. It all just varies by the platform. But there's not all of those rules that there is with super.
The other thing is that you have a little bit more flexibility, whereas if you're investing directly into super, you're usually in a super fund of some sort. Whereas here you can pick and choose what ETFs you want to invest in, what companies, or what funds as well.
Yeah. Dividends and capital gains is usually taxed at your marginal tax rate, so you don't get that discount. But for capital gains, there is the capital gains tax discount if you hold the investment for over 12 months, which is awesome. And you can also access it at any time within reason, I guess. Like you can just sell it. You don't have to wait until retirement. There's also not all the changing rules too. Like I know they brought out the high income tax on super recently as well. So it's a bit challenging with super. Sometimes you're hoping for things to be the same in 20, 30 or 40 years as what you've made your decision now. But with shares, you have a lot more control over that.
So we've kind of given you the rundown of what investing in your super is like and what investing outside of your super is like. Like here, we're going to run down some of the pros and cons just to get to the points across, and then we'll discuss it a bit more.
Yes, definitely stay with us. I know super can be very confusing. Even just for my brain, when I write down like pre-tax and post-tax and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, which one do they mean again? But it's fine. We'll go through it again.
I actually had a really awesome question at our first book launch where someone said, what part of the book, like where in the book did you learn something new? In our book, How to Not Work Forever. And I said, super was probably the one that was a little bit harder to write because it is so complex. And even when you feel like you know it very well, you're always learning something new about it.
Yeah, the super chapter was horrendous to write. Like I find investing so interesting and I love telling our stories, but the super chapter is so hard because it's so intricate and I don't want to get things wrong. So that was such a challenge, but I've heard it's good. I've had good feedback so far. So I'm glad we got through it.
Good. Even things change, right? Like the caps change. As we were writing this, we're
so
like,
hard.
oh, it's a new calendar year. We have to update the caps.
Because they hadn't actually legislated the change. It was like hinted that they were going to change it, but they hadn't definitely confirmed it at that point. So we were like, do we hope they'll change it? Do we not? What do we do? But it's fine. We changed it in the final editing stages. But the fun of writing a book about money.
Yes, indeed.
So back to super. One of the main pros of investing inside your super fund is that earnings within super are taxed at a lower rate of 15%, which is generally lower than your personal income tax rates. So going back to the new tax rates from the 1st of July this year, if you earn between $18,200 and $45,000, you'll be taxed 16 cents on the dollar, which is 16%. And then if you earn between $45,000 to $135,000, you will be taxed 30 cents on the dollar, which is 30%.
The other thing about super is you can invest in various assets. So you can invest in property, in infrastructure, and in private equity. Usually this is within a form of a specific super fund.
Yeah, of a self-managed super fund, you often have a lot more choice and control and a lot more funds to access things, but they obviously come with extra fees, which we'll talk about in the cons. There's also super simple funds, super simple ones. Super funds to get started, and they have lots of set and forget options where you can just put your money into a portfolio and set and forget. You can kind of do a similar thing outside of super with things like VDHG or DHHF, the beta shares one. But yeah, the super funds make it pretty simple for you.
Usually referred to as My Super.
Yeah. Some popular options are Australian Super, there's UniSuper, there's Host Plus. I really enjoy the Australian Super website just for researching and seeing what they actually invest in. I enjoy how they kind of outline their portfolios and asset allocation. So even if you're just curious, you can go have a look at their website.
The other pro, which can also be a bit of a con, is that it's locked away until retirement. So the positive of this is that you're less likely to pull it out, play with it, change up your strategy. It's kind of more of a set and forget. But this could also be seen a little bit as a con if you need to access it earlier.
Yes, there are ways that you can get out your money if you are experiencing financial hardship or certain medical conditions as well. But if you know that you're someone who often transfers money back from your savings so you can spend it, this might be an option for you when you've made a choice and you want to just lock it away for now. That kind of leads into our cons though. Obviously, the biggest con for me, especially with super, is that you can't access it until your preservation age. For most of that is 60 years of age at the moment, but it could change. Preservation age, I've been playing Stardew, if anyone's played that game too. And in Stardew, you put fruit into preserve jars to make jam. And I kind of think of preservation age as like the same thing, like you're putting it away for later until it's matured and ready. So I'm thinking about it as like we're putting our super into the jam jars. But anyway, Preservation age is the minimum age at which you can actually access your super benefits, provided you have retired or met other conditions. So you can't just reach preservation age. You actually need to make sure you satisfy other criteria as well. So a lot of us, even though preservation age is 60, we might not be able to access super until 65 or 67, for example.
Yeah, all of the little intricate parts of super that you may or may not know. But nonetheless, and the other con about investing directly into super is the limitations of the caps that we talked about. So there is a certain amount. You can't, for example, get a huge inheritance of money or have sold a property and then decide to dump it all into super. You have to look at those caps or see if there's any of those, what are they called? Rollover caps? No, what are they called?
Yeah. Rollover caps, catch-up contributions. No, there's like catch-up contributions. There's also like a downsizers contribution as well for some people. If you're a certain age and you're selling a property, you can put extra money in. There's lots of like rules like that. So yeah, it's hard to cover them all in a podcast, but you can always have a Google look on the ATO website as well and see what's available. If you are thinking about selling a property or doing something big with your money and thinking about super, it might be worth actually getting financial advice. I think this is a really crucial time where it may be worth paying for advice, because I know you had an issue with this, Anna, where you couldn't get parental leave, just like decisions like that can impact other things in a big way.
Yeah, if you're making big life choices, such as selling something, or you come across a lot of money due to inheritance, it is really important to get some professional guidance here, because even if you are financially savvy, you can make mistakes, as so many of us do.
There's just so many rules.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of investing directly into shares. So some of the pros are that it's really easy to access and it has high liquidity. So for people who don't know what liquidity is, it's essentially, just think of it as liquid. Like you can move it around really easily. You can sell and buy it really easily. That's what liquidity means.
Oh my God, I love that. Shares are liquid and super is solid.
Yeah, there you go. The elements.
You've got to defrost it. No, super's frozen because you've got to defrost it to be liquid to spend it. I like that.
Oh, good. I like that one too.
You have complete autonomy on what to invest in. You can buy individual shares. You can buy ETFs. You can go and put your money into a property if you want to. You can do this with some super funds, like something called a self-managed super fund, but usually most of us are just investing in our My Super funds that give you a few options to pick from. Whereas with your shares, you have a lot more control over them yourself outside of super.
The other big pro that I love is dividends. Essentially, you get paid. So if you're investing in a company and they have profits, they often pay that out to their shareholders in the form of dividends. Now, these do get taxed, but the thing is, it is cash and money that comes to you. So essentially, you have another income stream.
There are dividends and income things in your super fund as well. You just don't get to access them. They just get reinvested within the fund. So they are both there, but it is nice being able to invest and seeing that income now instead of waiting 20, 30, 40 years away from now. Some of the cons, we kind of touched on these above, is definitely the taxes and fees. So apart from the capital gains tax discount, which is where you hold a share and investment for over 12 months, you have to pay tax at your marginal tax rate, which is a lot higher usually than the 15% super tax rate. So let's say your tax rate is 30%. It's kind of you're paying double the tax that you would inside your super fund. So that's a con.
I guess that's the price you have to pay for liquidity, right?
Yes.
The other con is that chances are you have to do a little bit more research, and there's a little bit more of a process around that as well. So you have to be on top of your taxes. You have to know how much dividends is coming in. It might be worth talking to a tax accountant as well as you're doing all of this stuff. So there's just a little bit more admin work. It's a bigger process, and you really want to do research on exactly what share or ETF you're investing in, as opposed to just the easy way of setting up through a super where you're in their My Super fund, which is kind of really simple. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and super is a big thing. Like the government regulates it really well. They publish the underperformers. Like it's really easy to find a good super fund and stick with it. But with your own portfolio, it's really easy to get distracted by GameStop or the latest crypto coin or whatever it is and want to tinker and try and make things better or maybe gamble a little bit more. So that's definitely a thing to consider as well.
Yeah, that is a big con, like being able to easily access it, change it around, tinker with your portfolio, change your mind and put it all in Bitcoin and then, to the moon and GameStop. So yeah. That is a bit of a con there as well.
Yeah, I think you have to look at who you are as a person and think, can I actually just invest and hold shares outside of super? Or am I someone who needs to lock it away and have some that I'm not able to touch at all? I think it's a similar way to think about your emergency fund. Some people can have them in the same bank. Other people need to create a bank account that they don't see every day to keep it out of sight, out of mind. You can do that with your investments as well, but only you know yourself.
Yeah. There are a bunch of other things that you really need to consider when you're deciding whether to invest in your super or outside of your super. The first one would be goals. Like, what are you planning on doing? Do you just want to make sure that you're going to retire and you're in a good financial situation? Or do you have other goals, such as you want to buy a house or you want to make passive income through dividends? Knowing your goals is really, really important in deciding where you put your money. So some of my friends I know that I talk to who are like, I don't know what it's going to be like in retirement, so I just want to invest directly into super. It's, a tax advantage, and I know I'm going to work until that time, so that's my goal. Whereas other people I know are like, no, I want the dividends, I want to have cash flow, and that's really important to me. So knowing your goals is absolutely something that you should think about.
Yeah, and this ties into your time frame as well. I know you touched on it earlier. Like, I feel like super is so far away for me and I don't really want to put extra into because it feels like forever away. Versus like someone who's a bit older, or my parents, for example, they are closer to retiring. So they're just putting everything into super to make the most of it because they can access it in like 5 to 10 years. So it depends on where you are in your life, what your goals are, and how long you've got until you access it. So maybe someone, for me, I'm 26 at the moment, I might put in like $50 a week extra. But someone who's closer to retiring might put in like $500 a week extra. It just really depends.
I also had a conversation with a financial advisor recently who was saying it depends on if you're partnered and what the age difference is between your partner and you. And I'm actually older than my partner. And one of the things that we talked about is as we eventually get closer and closer to retirement, I should definitely put more and more money into my super because I'll be able to access it quicker. I'll be the first one to access it. So there are strategic things why it's really great to talk to a financial advisor because of course that makes sense. But if you're not thinking about it, you don't know how to include it in your strategy. So that's another thing to think about when it comes to timeframes.
Yeah, definitely. And also your income as well and the tax saving. So if you are a lower income earner at the moment, there wouldn't be as much of a benefit as a higher income earner, for example. And also just like how much surplus income you have too. So I think we've talked about what are your goals? When do you want to access it? That's the biggest question. What's your income? Are you even saving that much in tax? And then how much do you actually need to retire as well?
Well, the other thing about income tax that we haven't really talked about on goals is that you can use your super to buy a first home. There's the first home super saver scheme. And we haven't talked about this, but we will do an episode on this in the future. But that might be another goal that you have, in which case it might be advantageous if you run the numbers to invest through your super in order to be able to purchase a home sooner.
Yeah, I am so envious of people who use that scheme because I did not know about it when I bought my first home. And you do have to plan a few years in advance as well because there's rules around that too. But to use it, you have to add extra into your super. You can't use your employer guarantee amounts, but we'll definitely do an episode on that. And it's worth having a Google if you are thinking about buying a house and you might be able to use your super.
Another thing to consider is how much you need when you retire. So the thing is, if you want your money to grow, of course, we know that time really kind of helps you compound. But that's the other thing when it comes to the tax advantage way of investing within your super, or if you have money or inheritance or a house that you're willing to sell at some point, knowing how much you need to retire is really important as well if you're investing within or outside of your super.
I've seen heaps of things online of like how much you need to be on track because obviously compound interest works. So it's hard to work out. Maybe if you're just looking at a total super amount, how much you need at each age. So you can have a look at those things. There's the super retirement, is it standard guidelines or something like that you can find as well that give you an idea of how much super you need to meet a certain way of living and a certain budget as well. So that's interesting. But I think, yeah, it's definitely like going back to when do you need the money and are you willing to put it away for that long to make a tax saving? I guess with like when we talk about paying off your mortgage or putting your money in a savings account or like paying off debt or investing, we often talk about a guaranteed return. And with super, by saving that tax amount, you are guaranteeing yourself a return that you're not getting outside of super, which is awesome.
One of the last things to think about is when you need to access this money. And I know we talked a little bit about it, whether it's retirement or whether it's earlier. But the thing is, if you think you're going to need to access that money sooner and you know it's going to be locked away in super, investing outside of super might be more advantageous for you. So it's just really important to think about your long-term goals and when you need that money, because remember the magical word, liquidity. It's not frozen and stuck in your super. You can access it earlier.
But you can do both. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can be like, when I'm younger, I'm going to do 10% extra into super and 90% extra outside of shares of your like disposable income or whatever it is. And then maybe as you get older, you put more into super because you know it's getting closer to being able to access it. But yeah, it is a hard one, and super is not exciting when you're younger. Like I definitely struggle to get excited about super.
So do you invest, like what would you do in your situation? Do you invest in super? Like what do you do, Tash?
Not really, no. I haven't really put extra into super. Now that I'm self-employed, I have to pay myself super. So I'm paying myself like what I would, I guess, if I was employed regularly. But at the moment, no, like I'm trying to get excited about it because the tax benefits are amazing, but not for this year, maybe next year, or maybe I will just start putting in $50 extra a week. Like 60 or 65 isn't actually that far away in the grand scheme of life. Like I loved when you mentioned something one time where it's like you think about outside of super to get you to 60 or 65, and then you think about super for the rest of your life and not just viewing it as this thing that's so far away, because super will fund like 20, 30 years of my life, but it is just so far away. So it's hard, but mostly no, I like having it in my brokerage account. I like looking at it. I like getting the dividends. I change my mind about what I want to do like every year. I don't know where I want to be in 5 years. So it's really hard for me to lock that money away mentally. And I think it's better to be excited about it personally, but then like the tax benefits are great. So not yet, but on the cards for maybe next year. But what about you?
So yeah, it's a great question. Before I went on parental leave, like the few years before that, I think we chatted a little bit about this, but I put quite a bit in super because I knew I was going to purchase a first home. And so for me, it was advantageous to put money aside. And actually that was like the big goal. I was like putting as much money into my super. I hit the caps for 2 full years just to be able to put that money in and hopefully grow and get the tax advantage of that. Since then, I've been working part-time and on parental leave, so my income has been much lower, so I have not been contributing to super. But having said that, for anyone who is on parental leave or has little ones or is working part-time, it's really important to think about your super because especially if you're a woman, women over the age of 55 are the highest growing cohort of homelessness and poverty, and a lot of that has to do with not having money into your super, not having money coming in. So super is really, really important, especially for women who have taken time out of the workforce. So to answer your question, at the moment, I'm not putting money into super because I'm working, I have a lower income, I'm working part-time, and that's just kind of where I'm at in my life. If I were to be working full-time, I think I would because it would bring down my taxable income. And especially the more I'm investing and the more money I have invested, the more income streams that I have, more money's coming in, your income will, I'm hoping my income will just increase. And therefore I want to decrease my taxable income by investing into my super. So it's a bit of a tax strategic kind of way, but setting myself up for the future. Yeah. So that's how I'm thinking about it. Not at the moment, but eventually I will be working full time and then my strategy will change.
Amazing. I think it's really important to note as well when I say that I don't put extra into super, I'm still investing enough outside of super that will set me up for retirement. I think it's a very different story if you're like saving for short-term goals and you don't have anything put away for really long-term you. Maybe that is the time when you want to put extra into your super. But yeah, it's a hard one. Hard decisions to make.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with a friend of mine who's is in their early 40s, and they're like, They just purchased their own first place for themselves, but they don't really have a big safety net. They haven't been investing a lot outside of super. And so their whole goal is like, I just want to make sure that I am fine in retirement. And so their whole goal is investing as much into super as possible. So again, even if you're in the same age bracket or you have the same time frames, your investing journey or your goals might be different based on where you're at in your life.
Yeah, it's really hard with mortgages and interest rates at the moment because I see a few people I've spoken to, they're putting every spare dollar they have into their mortgage, which is like great. They have to do that. They need to live in their home, but it's also scary thinking about the future. Like it's amazing to have a fully paid off house, but if you've not got any income to live off in the future, that's going to be challenging as well. I think it's what they say when you're asset rich, but cash flow poor. So it's important to kind of spread it over a few different goals as well. Like, yes, a house is great and having your own home is great, but are you factoring in cash for retirement or cash for when you have go on parental leave or stuff like that as well?
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing for people with young families. Your cash flow is so tight because life is so expensive. And there's this whole thing called the sandwich generation, which is my generation where you've got young kids, but you also might be looking after an elderly parents. And that can impact, again, your goals and your cash flow. So you might just not have the money to invest at a specific time. And that's okay, as long as you're thinking about it.
Yes, that really hit me the other day. I saw a mum with 3 kids and they all had Boost juices. And it kind of hit me. It was like, wow, when you have kids, you have to buy them each individual thing. Like, obviously I knew that. But then looking at Boost juices, like they're quite expensive. Like that's, huge extra costs and just all those day-to-day things that I just forget exist.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Eating out. Like my kid the other day was like, can we get food? Can we buy food? Like sometimes we'll pick up food and like take it home after childcare or school or whatever. And I'm like, no, we have a full fridge. I just did a big shop. And you just realize you're like, oh, if you go and spend all that money, it just adds up. This is a whole other topic of an episode.
Whole rant, yes.
Yeah.
So in summary.
In summary, it depends on your cash flow.
In summary, it depends on, your time frame, your tax rate, your goals, what you want to do. But I don't think it's a bad idea to put a little bit more into super if you're not sure. Like if you're being a bit paralyzed by the decision, you can't make a decision, just add $50 a week or whatever it is, $10 a week into your super, and then like nothing bad comes from that.
Yeah, awesome. Now we know.
Yay.
I wonder what Angela's going to do.
Yeah, let us know if you decide. I'm interested.
Yeah, awesome.
And also, if you have a question, we love answering the voice questions because obviously it's a bit hard sometimes to convey exactly what you're saying in a quick message or a quick story reply. So we love these voice questions. If you want your question answered, please send us one. I've got the link saved in a story highlight on the Get Rich Slow Club Instagram, and I'll try and remember to put it in the show notes too. But if not, head to that Instagram and you'll find it there.
Awesome. Till next time.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invest or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.